This is a wonderful presentation. Like I said, very excited to have this opportunity. And with that, I will turn it over to Blanca and Stacey.
Excellent. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Stacey Lestina. This is Blanca Trejo. And we are both with the Higher Education Access Alliance, or HEAA, as you may have heard it before. We're going to go over tonight some of the policy aspects, implementation aspects, and application aspects of the asset bill. And we'll begin with a quick video of Jose, which Blanca will introduce.
So Jose Antonio Vargas is a dreamer who has done a lot of work promoting and supporting immigration reform and really trying to get the story out there to the public. Right, so he's an example, and I'll show it and we'll play it, an example of the human face to some of these policy measures. So with that, go ahead, Stacey.
My name is Jose Antonio Vargas. I was born in the Philippines. I moved to the United States when I was 12. My mother wanted to give me a better life, so she sent me to live with my grandparents in Silicon Valley. I loved America the moment I got here. Embraced the language, the culture, the people. English was my second language, and I learned to speak American by watching Frasier, Home Improvement, The Golden Girls. I won the spelling bee in 8th grade by spelling indefatigable. In high school, I fell in love with journalism. I started working for my local newspaper, the Mountain View Voice. Then I got hired at the Washington Post. I covered the 2008 presidential campaign, from traveling on Hillary Clinton's plane to pheasant hunting with Huckabee. I've interviewed Al Gore for Rolling Stone and profiled Mark Zuckerberg for the New Yorker. I even won a Pulitzer Prize for covering the Virginia Tech massacre. At age 16, I rode my bike to the DMV to get my driver's permit. I brought my green card with me. The woman at the DMV flipped it around. She leaned over and she whispered, "This is fake. Don't come back here again." I went home and confronted my grandfather. That was the first time I realized that I'm an undocumented immigrant. What some people call an illegal. The first person I told was Mrs. Denny, my choir teacher. After she told me that she was planning a choir trip to Japan, I told her I couldn't afford it. But she said we'd find a way, we'd figure it out. Then I decided to tell her the truth. It's not really about the money, I said. I don't have the right passport. I'm not supposed to be here. Mrs. Denny got it. The next day, she told me the choir was going to Hawaii instead.
It just mattered to me that Jose was hardworking, he was enthusiastic, he was always coming to class, and it's our job to educate them, to make them better citizens of the world. It doesn't matter what country they're from or what their background or their legal papers are.
Mrs. Denny was the very first member of my personal underground railroad. Americans who decided to help undocumented immigrants like me. Other members of my underground railroad include Rich Fisher, my high school superintendent, and Pat Hyland, my high school principal. For more than a decade now, Pat and Rich have been with me every step of the way, guiding me and supporting me as I've tried to define what it means to be an American. I define American as someone who works really hard, someone who's proud to be in this country and wants to contribute to it. I'm independent. I pay taxes. I'm self-sufficient. I'm an American. I just don't have the right papers. I take full responsibility for my actions, and I'm sorry for the laws that I broke. What would you do if if you were a choir teacher and found out that a student in your glee club can't travel for a competition? What would you do if you were a high school principal and found out that one of your students can't apply for financial aid? What would you do if your child's best friend didn't have papers? As a journalist, I've decided to do what I know best. Ask questions. So let's talk. What would you do?
So DefiantAmerican.com is Jose Antonio Vargas's website, where he has posted a myriad of different videos from students from all over the world who are here in this country, right, brought at a very young age, and are really trying to succeed and do better here, and not just for themselves, but for their families. And so there's a couple of reasons why I really enjoy showing Jose Antonio his story. And one is that he's not Mexican. Right? So often, particularly in Colorado, a lot of our students may, right, or our communities may feel like, oh, this is a Mexican issue or a Latino issue. And the reality here in Colorado as well is that our students are coming from all over the globe. His family were from the Philippines, right? Also, the way that he is talking to Mrs. Denning, the choir teacher, not necessarily his college advising counselor, but somebody, as he mentioned, was part of his Underground Railroad. And I think as each of us sit here and listen into this video afterwards, right, we are probably a part of somebody's Underground Railroad even now. And the way that he approached Mrs. Denning, to try to explain his situation wasn't to say outright, I'm here undocumented. It was to kind of put up some textos. I'm Mexican-American myself, so I switch Spanglish. I apologize, I'm trying to keep it in English. But he said, I can't afford the trip, right? And then he says, I don't have the right passport. So as we are starting to engage in these conversations with our young people, our students, for one, not all of them may know and understand their legal status. As Jose's situation indicated, he didn't know actually until he tried to get a driver's license. And it's right around that time in a young person's life when you're trying to get a driver's license, or you're trying to apply for college, or you're trying to apply for FAFSA, and you're confronted with that question, do you have a social security number, when students then have to have those tough conversations with their family. And so I often use this video also with my students to start to create a safe space, a space of confianza, of trust, where we can then begin to understand, without making assumptions or jumping to conclusions, right, who really are the students that need this type of information and support. And how can we as counselors and as members of the Underground Railroad and as advocates listen carefully and intently at what our students are trying to tell us, and create the spaces, the classrooms, where we can begin to have conversations about the resources that we now have available. One of the key policies that we're focusing all of this session on is Colorado Asset. And so as I pound it off to Stacey to go ahead and get into really the policy aspects, I just want us to keep in mind, as I'm sure we already are, all of the faces, right? All the stories of the students, right, that are directly impacted by this policy.
Thank you, Blanca. And to dovetail off of what Blanca was talking about, creating that safe space where students can come and talk to you, we have wrapped your presentation materials in a folder, which can also act as a poster that you can put up in your offices, your counseling centers, wherever is helpful for your students, to act as one, a sign that this is a safe space for students to come and speak to you about asset, and two, to let them know what asset is, that it exists, and that it's an opportunity that students can apply for. We have all of our materials available for download and use however you need at coloradoasset.com. We'll have our website up for at least another year, so feel free to download and print any of these posters or any of this information at your leisure. The information that's contained inside the folders is a little bit more of the policy side that I'm going to get into, and this is the more technical aspect that you as educators deal with when it comes to asset.